Right. I don't think that is a legitimate category, sign gifts. That assumes that some gifts are signs of God's presence or signs of apostolic authority or something like that. That's a category I reject. I think that if you look at the Greek word semeion in the New Testament, Paul in 2 Corinthians, for instance, when he talks about the signs of a true apostle, he talks about his faithful endurance through persecution, his faithful preaching of the gospel, his suffering in place of in the spite of opposition, his care for the Corinthians, all these things that give indications of God's presence and authentication in his gospel ministry. But I don't know of any place where certain spiritual gifts are designated as signs that point to the apostles. I reject the category. Sorry. How did I arrive at the position? Well, at the position that I think that the miraculous gifts of the Spirit are valid for today. That would include prophecy, tongues, interpretation of tongues, healing, and probably casting out of demons. It's just that the character of the New Covenant age, after the Holy Spirit comes in Acts 2, the character of the New Covenant age is that the Holy Spirit comes in power and works miracles in conjunction often with the preaching of the gospel and then the spread of the church. That's the characteristic that you read it through the book of Acts, you read it in Romans, you read 1 Corinthians, you read it in Ephesians, it's in 1 Peter. It's many places in the New Testament where you have testimony to the fact that the New Testament church was a miracle-working church. And the arguments, as I've argued in writing many places, the arguments that people have put forth to try to say, oh no, these gifts were only for that certain period or for that certain age while the apostles were alive, the first 100 years or something, or 120 years. I just do not find those arguments persuasive. So it's the nature of the work of the Holy Spirit in believers in the New Covenant age. That's the larger argument. In terms of specific exegetical arguments, I think Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, I think verse 10, that when the perfect comes, the imperfect will pass away, or when the perfect comes, the partial will pass away. The partial is Greek ekmeros. It's the spiritual gifts that he's talking about in the previous verses. And when the perfect comes is at the time of Christ's return. So I think 1 Corinthians 13:10 tells us when those gifts will cease. It says when Christ returns, that's the force of that verse 10, then those gifts will cease. So it's an exegetical argument, and I've expressed it in some detail in my systematic theology book, chapters 52 and 53, and then a book on the gift of prophecy in the New Testament and today, and a book I edited, Brandan, called Our Miraculous Gifts for Today, 4 Views, which Sander Van put out, and that's those are all. In fact, Brandan, if I could mention I have a website, WayneGrudem.com, where all those books are listed with a brief summary and a number of articles and videos and things. Well, I know every chapter. Now, I have a midterm exam coming up tomorrow night for students, and they will maybe know more detail about it than I do at that point. I'm not sure. I hope a lot.